Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, AJ. I really enjoyed helping out with those the APMP videos, so glad to be a part of that. So yes, as AJ mentioned, today we are focusing on Édouard Manet. Édouard Manet was a French modernist painter. He was one of the first 19th century artists to paint modern life, as well as a pivotal figure in the transition from realism to impressionism. Manet was born into an upper middle class Parisian family. His father, Auguste, was a dedicated, high-ranking civil servant, and his mother, Eugénie, was the daughter of a diplomat. Along with his two younger brothers, Manet grew up in a bourgeois environment, both socially conservative and financially comfortable. But Manet rejected the naval career originally envisioned for him, and he became engrossed in the world of painting. Music in the Tuileries is an example of Manet's early style. He was inspired by the old masters such as Velázquez and interested in the subject of leisure. Although no musicians are painted in this piece, we can imagine the music and conversation that was present at these weekly concerts in the Tuileries just outside of the Louvre. Manet actually painted himself on the left, as we can see outlined in red, and as well he included his brother Eugene Manet, who is in the white trousers just right of center right here. This piece is now duly owned by the National Gallery in London and the Hugh Lane Gallery in Dublin, where it's located. It was uncommon and kind of radical to depict paintings of modern life and real people in their real lives, but Manet wasn't interested in depicting religious scenes or mythology, as was the general status quo of painters before him. He befriended fellow painters such as Degas, Renoir, Monet, Cézanne. Of course, all of these artists became leaders of Impressionism. On the left is a portrait that Manet painted of Berthe Morisot, fellow painter and grandniece of painter Jean-Honoré Fragonard, who we discussed in a previous art talk. And I personally love the plum on the right. It's so simple, just showing a woman eating a plum out of a glass bowl, but she has such emotion and such longing behind her eyes. On a trip to Spain in 1865, Manet visited the Prado, where the art of Diego Velázquez was a revelation to him. On his return to Paris in 1866, he began working on a new painting, depicting an anonymous regimental fifer on the Spanish army. In this picture, Manet presents the uniformed boy in a manner that imitates the formula and style of Velázquez's court portraits, kind of against a flattened background of neutral tone. This painting was actually rejected by the jury for the Salon of 1866, and Émile Zola, a friend of Manet's, was so outraged that he published multiple articles in a newspaper praising Manet's realist style and modern content. So as AJ was talking about, these next three slides are all canvases dedicated to the execution of Maximilian of Austria, Emperor of Mexico, on June 19, 1867. So Maximilian was part of the Habsburgs in Austria and was a descendant of Charles V, King of Spain, when the Spanish conquered or colonized the Aztecs. Here's another version of that painting. Maximilian would seem to be a perfect candidate for the conservatives' plans for monarchy in Mexico with his royal pedigree. Maximilian was interested in assuming the throne, but with guarantees of French support. At the time of the idea of Maximilian as Emperor of Mexico, it seemed far-fetched, but circumstances changed, making it a viable plan. But his tenure as emperor was just 3 years, ending with his execution by firing squad by forces of the restored Republic in 1867. So here's the final rendition of that piece. Manet was a devout Republican and was keenly influenced by political events, and here he sought to record contemporary events like a grand history painter, but with his own modern vision. However, the painting's subject matter was too sensitive to be exhibited at the time, especially with the kind of overt implication of Napoleon III's culpability by dressing Maximilian in a sombrero and the soldiers in French uniforms. One of his last paintings, The Bugler, underscores Manet's later style, a blend and bridge between realism and impressionism. The background is simple and neutral, which emphasizes the shading that we can see almost come out of the horn and around the background, suggesting kind of a musical movement to this piece. This piece was also right before his death and is one of his more famous pieces. The Folies Bergère was a popular cafe concert for a fashionable and diverse crowd. The lively bar scene is reflected in the mirror behind the central figure, the sad bar girl. Her beautiful, tired eyes avoid contact with the viewer, who also plays a double role as the customer in this scene. And much has been made of the kind of faulty perspective from the reflection in the mirror, but this was evidently part of Manet's interest in artifice versus reality. Here's a self-portrait of Manet when he was in his 40s. And on the right is a still life of some flowers that a friend gave to him to encourage better health before his death. In 1883, he had a foot amputation due to gangrene and died 11 days later. He's buried at the Passy Cemetery in Paris. Manet was an extraordinary artist who played a large role in the early Impressionists movement. I hope you all enjoyed looking at some of his work today, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was fabulous. And my favorite one was actually De Bugler. Kind of interesting. I always thought the blend between Impressionism and the Realism was quite interesting, as well as the background, as you mentioned. So anyway, that was my favorite one. Now, before we talk about national intelligence, Greg, did we cover your favorite works by Manet?
Yes, you did. It's very hard for me to pick, but I think as a historian, I have to pick the Maximilian paintings. So I confess I like them all. It is, as you say, the combination of Impressionism and Realism, that transition that makes me so intrigued by Manet.
Indeed, and he's very oftentimes considered as part of the Impressionism movement, even though his art style is quite different than the Impressionism paintings that we're all very familiar with, particularly those by Monet. What a difference a letter makes, A versus O.